supposed to join. Oh, it looks like she's in. No. We'll wait one more minute. Do you have a question right off the bat, just to kind of break the ice?
So what's the purpose for these MPAs if there's no fishermen left on the West Coast? I mean, you go back 10 or 15 years and you see like the harbors now, there's barely any fishing boats on any of these harbors. Where are all the fishermen, and why are you guys doing all these MPAs if there's no fishermen left on this West Coast? I mean, I'm not here and I'm not mad at you. I'm trying to understand, because I'm a third generation fisherman here. My dad pioneered the spot prawn fishery on this West Coast. My son Adam runs our boat, the Ocean Warrior, out of Monterey. He's fourth generation. He's on here right now. You know, we've seen, we went down from heroes to zeros. We're like down to like, you know, bare bones on even like breathing. It's like we got to even be afraid to like go fishing anymore. You know what I mean? All the, you know, the fish, the game wardens, you know, want to ruin us all the time. There's so much pressure on us, and we're very few fishermen left on this West Coast. And it's like, if you go into any port from San Francisco, Santa Cruz, Monterey, halfway, all the ports up and on the coast, you see hardly any fishing boats anymore. Let's go back 15 years and let's look at pictures. And Steve Scheibler, you could probably, you know, help me out with this too. How many fishing boats was there in Monterey Harbor 15 years ago?
Well, when I went to work in Monterey in 1995, I counted fishing boats. One of the first things I did, and there was about 185 or so boats, and quite a high percentage were full-time boats. And when I left in 2017, I think we were down to about 75.
So with all these MPAs, and they want to keep cutting out like areas of fishing, and they want to, like, I mean, pretty soon you're going to have to pay somebody to go out of the marina. There's going to be like somebody to collect monies for you to be able to like leave the marina to go fishing.
All right.
You know, it's ridiculous. You know what I mean? It's ridiculous. There's no fishermen left on this West Coast. You know why? You know, I mean, you guys are killing us, the few that were left. Do you want to just like eat tilapia that's like grown in ponds?
Okay, so I'm sorry I'm late. So here's the frustration, and we want to try to get to as many people as we can. Apologies for the technical issues. And so would love to have as orderly a conversation as possible, and would love to start by talking about these questions. And we are going to take notes in real time. I have projected my screen so you can see the notes that we're taking in real time. And all these things that we are capturing will be conveyed to the department, will be in the summary report. AJ, have we pressed record yet?
Yes, we've been recording, so we're capturing everything.
Perfect, thank you. So sorry to interrupt, but I just want to make sure, and I want to remind folks of the meeting agreements, that there are no personal attacks and no inappropriate language. We are all trying to have a thoughtful conversation together. So would love to start with these questions here. Start with the first question of what does success look like to you as far as the MPAs go? Anybody want to start?
My name is Chen Shen. I just wanted to address Rob's concerns. I am hearing a lot of frustration from you about the fishing community and kind of the dwindling of the fishing community that you're seeing. I just wanted to communicate that the Marine Protected Area Project at CDFW is interested in collecting socioeconomic data in addition to ecological data from the MPAs. And we do have a long-term monitoring project that has conducted fishing community focus groups. And they have a website, which I will copy and paste here, where they've talked to fishing communities and interviewed them about their concerns. So I just wanted to make it known that that information will be going into the Decadal Management Review.
Well, like I was saying, and I'm not trying to like disrespect anybody here, but I'm glad, I'm happy that you're seeing my frustrations. We're just all trying to make a living. The few that were left, you know what I mean? And it's like, we want to work with you guys, but we can't afford to get, our areas of fishing cut any further. You know what I mean? And I just think that some of the data that supposedly you guys are collecting with this nearshore stuff, I mean, I just think some of it's incorrect. I'm sorry. I mean, again, no disrespect to anybody, but I feel that, it's data, like data coming out of the ocean for like different areas of, fish and, the type of species you guys are looking at and how much fish are there. It's like the sardines. You could go out of Monterey Harbor and go to where these sardines are milling around, and you could literally jump off your boat and hit sardines instead of the ocean. I mean, there's sardines for miles and miles. And I mean, how do they assess that? How do they assess how many metric tons there are in the ocean? And how do they close a fishery down like that? I understand it's a federal fishery. I get it. But how do they close a fishery down that is come back stronger than ever? But yet they're saying that there's not enough biomass to, in order for these squid fishermen to be able to go and fish something else because they have nothing else to fish. It's like, where do they get their data from? I mean, if you go west for hundreds and hundreds of miles, how do you know if there's sardines out there or if there's no sardines out there or any other type of fish species? I mean, do you guys got robots and electronics like everywhere in the ocean that is saying, hey, you know what? There's no fish out here, or there's fish out here. You know what I mean? I mean, God put these things on this planet for us to catch and for humans like you and I to be able to eat, to feed, society.
Thanks, Rob.
And
I want to.
And with us trimming all this stuff back, it's like pretty soon we're not going to be able to even, we're going to be forgetting on the type of fish that we've caught in our lives. It's upsetting. That's all I'm saying. It's upsetting.
Absolutely hear your frustration.
I
I want to
hear you,
make
Rob.
sure. Hold on one second, Steve. I want to make sure we can get to more folks in the room. We absolutely hear your frustration and the concerns about, the fishing community is being constrained into smaller areas. That even though fishermen are seeing normal biomasses that or good biomasses even, that the monitoring data is showing something different, and we're hearing those concerns and we're capturing them here on the screen. I want to make sure we can hear from other folks on the call as well. We want to make sure other folks can also, that as many folks as possible can be heard. So I'd like to pause for a moment. Steve Wertz would love for you to chime in, and then I'd love to get to, Dave and Dick have been really patient as well. So go ahead, Steve Wertz.
So sorry, guys. I apologize for being so hot-headed, but it's just my nature. I apologize.
And we're here to support you, and we genuinely want to hear what you have to say, and we also want to hear from others as well. So thank you, Rob.
Thank you.
Yeah, no, I was just going to say, I hear what you're saying, Rob, and the points you made are important, and if those could be channeled through these questions that we have here, that'll help us when we draft this report to make sure we're addressing those specific concerns if we can. I mean, I know you've got a whole list and many years of frustration, but if with these 4 questions that we have here, if you can channel that into some input to us on those specifically, that that helps us. We're benefiting from what you have to say to share with us, and we can use that information. So I just wanted to say that. And I appreciate you sharing your feelings. I mean, that's important. And so, but from there, let's try to get them focused on these questions. But of course, we can go off and answer other ones, because it's all going to come down to trying to have the best report possible to inform what's happening inside and outside of these marine protected areas. So I won't say any more of
Thanks,
that.
Steve. So I want to
Yeah.
acknowledge.
Rochelle, if you could increase the size of the Zoom on your document, I think that might help people to be able to read what you're writing. Thanks.
I absolutely can. So I want to acknowledge we have a queue. We have Dave Toriumi, we've got Dick Ogg, Steve Scheiblower, Alan Alward. I believe it's Christian Sajak. If it's Charlotte, we would love to have you as well. Sherry Flummerfeld. And yeah, so that's in our queue. So David, do you want to unmute yourself?
Yeah. Hi, how's it going? So we're on how would you define, measure, and assess progress towards the marine life protection goals? Is that what we're on here?
Yes. And if you have
Okay.
thoughts on the others, we will move around in questions. But yes, we'd love to start there.
I guess it's kind of confusing how I would define it. I'm just going to bounce on the back of what Rob just said, and kudos goes out to Aliotis and all the, the Italian community out in Monterey trying to fight for.
Yeah, I can't hear it. Is there any vocal going on?
Going
Is
to
it okay then?
definitely
gently
I'm gonna
remind
put
you to
that for
please
right
put
now.
yourself on mute if you're
what's
not
going
intending
on
to be
with
heard.
oh, sorry.
I'm just trying to find. I don't want to have to mute people because it's hard to unmute. If you're not intending to be heard, please.
Well, I'm in two. Yes, I'm in it too.
Just trying to figure out who's talking. Go ahead, Dave, and I'll mute
Okay,
them.
great. So the success, what it looks like, I was just, I'm going to jump on the back of what Rob and what Adam, the Aliotti family, and many Italian families and other families, from Monterey Bay, and what success does look like. And I'm going to tell you the factual numbers, since science goes off numbers, the numbers that I have for you as a factual fisherman, and Adam and Rob can surely back me up on this, is right now I'm $150,000 on the SBA loan, looking to FarmLink right now to get $200,000 just so I can get in another boat big enough and capable enough to what I see, because I'm on the whale working group of what I need to do with that. And that's just the whales. And now we're having issues with the salmon and the drought, and going forward with that. And then now we're looking at this, then we're looking at wind energy. I mean, there's just so many things right now that we're being attacked by on the environmental side that doesn't make sense to us, because we really are just trying to go out there and work. And we're putting our lives at stake. We're putting our families at stake, the hours with our kids, our relationships. I mean, there's just so much going on. I don't know how success is being put into this, but I would love to hear it. And I understand that scientists are looking at numbers and they're concerned about things. But you know what? We have to go out and do our jobs, just like everyone else is getting paid. And when we start seeing paychecks being cut and we're going further in depth, and you're looking at, the gray society of fishermen themselves, it's very, very concerning on everyone's behalf, from people whose families have been in this forever to new guys like me, first time generation commercial fishermen in the Central Coast, trying to make it and make a stepping stone for my sons and for my friends, younger and older, to try to get in this if they wanted to. It's really concerning why we're feeling like we're being attacked. And that's why I think we're seeing a lot of the reactions that you're going to see from a lot of us fishermen, because we really feel like we're being attacked.
Good job, Dave.
Yeah, Rob.
Sorry, I'm just having trouble unmuting myself. Thanks, Dave. And so what I have here, we've captured a lot of what you said about families being impacted, and what success looks like for you is to see a healthy, thriving fishing community. Is that right, Dave?
Yeah, no, that is right. And, I've been on the whale working group, and this economic report that's supposed to come out has taken literally like 2 years. And we've been talking about this and talking about this and talking about this. And it's a big workload. And I really understand maybe it's a big workload, but heck, man, if you get a couple fishermen, because obviously we ain't fishing these days, to get down and sit down with these e-tickets, I mean, we can do the numbers for you like in a matter of weeks. It's kind of weird how these economic impacts and the numbers that come out with are so hard to find when they're on pieces of paper. All it takes is a calculator, and you're going to be able to see up and down the coast. And there is already some documentation of that, some of the stuff that we saw in the whale working group that you know about, Rochelle. But this stuff needs to come out now. It can't wait 2-3 years. It needs to come out now, because when people start seeing how we're being impacted, you're really going to see the debt that we actually are accruing. We're accruing hundreds of thousands of dollars of debt. It's crazy. It's crazy.
Thanks, Dave. So I want to be mindful of the queue is getting really long, and we have 25 minutes before we're going back in. And so I really want to make sure that other voices can be heard. So Dick, can I ask you to unmute yourself?
Thank you, Rochelle. The concept of success is kind of an interesting perspective, you know, that we have as fishermen. I mean, I'm sitting here thinking to myself, I don't see these MPAs going away. We're not going to be able to do anything about it. But are we ever going to be able to change the regulatory restrictions that there are within those MPAs? Would there be the possibility that we could troll salmon through there, since it's a pelagic species? Would we be able to potentially access some rockfish in those areas? Is there any reason that we couldn't try to, you know, if there's no bottom contact, if there's no damage to the area, is that something that is possible in the future? You know, I'm concerned about, you know, that our ability to provide a sustainable resource. And I certainly do not want to see additional restrictions put on us. And, you know, we've all worked very, very hard as not only politicians, but also as just working members in our different committees to try and make our voices heard. And sometimes it feels like it's falling on deaf ears. And we have a very difficult time. And there's a lot of, as you can see, a lot of frustration. And I know everybody understands that, but I just wonder about the possibility for changes.
Thanks, Dick. Steve Works, you and Chen and Tammy are the Department of Fish and Wildlife, and Tova's OPC. Please feel free to chime in. You don't need to raise your hand.
I was just going to add, to just make sure for clarification on Dick's comment. I think he was talking accessing salmon, maybe not rockfish in the MPAs. He was thinking about pelagic species that transit through. So I would probably remove rockfish and maybe say other pelagic species.
Well, not only. No,
I think that's what you.
Hold on.
Oh, go ahead.
No, I was talking about both. I was talking about the ability to potentially still access those fisheries, those different fish for our, you know, for commercial purposes. If we see success, for me would be the population increase at a point where we would be able to utilize that resource to supply a product to the public. Is that ever a possibility? Are those changes available for us? That was my question.
You know, I was going to say, in the planning process, there was some areas that had a very high level of protection that allowed like only spearfishing for recreational fishermen, or trolling for salmon, prohibiting all other types of take except trolling, because it's up in the upper water column. There's probably minimal impact to habitats. And, you know, those types of things are what we'll be looking into in the analysis. And that's something you should be pounding the drum on and saying, hey, I'd like to see what the results are in, let's say, this particular conservation area that you prohibited everything, but you have allowed the trolling for salmon. And if, you know, that could be a place where you could make a stand and say, what's the data say? And if the data comes back and says, well, there is no significant impact to the MPA, perhaps the commission could consider allowing trolling in other areas that aren't allowed. I'm not saying that will happen, but that's a valid argument to be made. And there are MPAs along the coastline where there are these types of fisheries that have really no bottom impact. There's probably no real chance of bycatch. And there are a few like that. So that's something you may want to consider or think about or ask the commission about. So,
Thanks, Steve. What I'm hearing, Dick asked if areas will open, and what I'm hearing from Steve is we don't know, and yet there are studies that can inform the commission's decisions, and public comment from individuals like yourselves to the commission can help inform what happens to these areas moving forward. So next on the list, we have Steve Scheiblower.
Yes, thank you. First, I want to point out, if my memory serves me, that as a law, the MLPA does not stipulate whether each of the marine protected areas needs to satisfy all 6 of the goals. And I bring that up because one of the goals of one of the law provides for MPAs being established just for their intrinsic value. And that's a noble thought, intrinsic value. But it also means that you don't have to have any science or monitoring or anything, because the sheer fact that you've created a protected area satisfies the intrinsic value objective. And so, you know, if intrinsic value is going to be applied to each and every MPA, in a way, you're dead in the water, because if you have to meet that goal, you can never get beyond that. Moving beyond that question, you know, how do you measure success? I would say if you can somehow measure whether they have any positive effect on the health of the greater California current ecosystem. And I know there's a lot of undefined concepts about health and what have you in my answer, but if you can somehow measure, you know, whether these things have actually created a positive change, then maybe you can get to answering whether they've done any good. I'm skeptical that you can measure, because I'm skeptical that sufficient baseline data has not been developed for multiple years in all the MPAs to be able to say whether it's natural variation or economic or regulatory or what have you that's created changes. And I'll point out that having a control area outside of the MPA doesn't cut it for measuring change, because that control area is likely to be fished harder with the creation of the MPA than it was before. And so you have this balance problem. And so go back to baseline studies saying you're gonna have a real challenge if you don't have multiple years for every MPA to really know what changes have occurred. Thank you.
Alan Allard? Alward, I'm sorry.
Oh, you're not the only one who has trouble with that. Can you hear me? Yeah.
Yes, you're loud and clear.
Okay, so I am an old-time fisherman. I was a diver out of Santa Barbara, and I participated in the MPAs when they were created down there. And we went through the whole penny thing, and we identified the areas that were most important to us, and we received the promise that they were gonna, you know, leave as much of our areas that were very important to us intact. And they came through on that promise to a large degree. We lost some very good areas, but I would say 2/3 of the areas that were our best areas, we retained under that process. And it hurt, but it was, there was a kind of a justice to it. So I lived in Morro Bay, and I used to commute down there to work. And I was there on the day when they announced the creation of the MPA in the San Luis Obispo area. And I talked to Tom as he was coming out. I didn't know Tom then, but I asked him, I said, well, what did you think of that? And he says, well, they took 80% of what we consider our best fishing ground. So, and that came about because the standards changed. You know, they promised the fishermen they were going to, you know, treat their pennies with respect and try to leave them some areas. But somewhere along the line, the Blue Ribbon Task Force decided, no, we're going to take away the most productive areas because those are the areas that will do the most good to protect. And so there was some fundamental injustice in the process as it went down at the time. And I know Tom Hafer can speak to this a lot better than I can. But all these people that were there at the time are disappearing off the map. You know, we're getting older, and the people that can testify on this are going over the horizon. And this is actually your last chance to have some kind of an investigation into what actually went down, because there will always be a pea under the mattress with the fishermen over this, because the way things happened was not correct. And there is some injustice there. And I'm just wondering, the MPA, the Marine Life Protection Act said that they were going to create MPAs that represented the various kinds of bottom property, you know, soft, mud, sand, and rock. And then what they came through and went was they took all the rocky points. And it just seemed like it did not live up to what the actual act that was passed. Somewhere along the line, it transformed. And I wonder if you could be looking into that and possibly doing a review of the original process. Thank you.
So as you're saying this, we're also adding this in here because some of these questions are being answered as we go. Initiative. As folks are sharing their thoughts more generally, but also the what you deem as success, how you define success of the MPA network. We've also heard some other things that answer this question of the top highest priority topics and issues and sources of information you'd like to see included in the decadal review. We've heard, you know, as populations increase, we'd like to see areas open. We'd like to see multiple years of baseline research. And then what you just said, Alan, about you'd like to see a review of the original process of the MLPA initiative process.
Well, and whether or not the MLP Act was obeyed in the way it was designated. I'm talking about the different areas, because when you take the Rocky Points and it just didn't obey what the directive was from the legislature.
Yep. Gotcha. And I also heard you talk about what success looks like very, very briefly, but I heard you refer to similar to, and tell me if I'm pulling too hard, but from similar to what David said about the thriving fishing communities, that you're concerned with the MPAs as thriving fishing communities. Is that right?
Well, actually, I didn't speak to that. What I said was that the process was more successful in the Channel Islands in honoring, you know, the input of the fishermen.
Got it. Thank you.
Which was a federal process.
Yes. All right, Christian Sajak, or if it's Charlotte, usually ask you to unmute.
Yeah, I'm a hook. Can you hear me?
Yes, we've got you.
Okay. I'm computer terrible, so
You're
Stone
doing
Ages.
great.
You're talking Stone Ages.
You got the first step. We're good. We can hear your voice.
Okay. My main concerns are, I've been fishing hook and line near shore for about 40 years. And I think the low impact of near shore fishing has not damaged the ecosystem in any way, or ever could it. The ecosystem has been pronounced rebuilt by many esteemed fisheries biologists who say that the species of Sebastes have already rebuilt. This means that the MPAs and the loss of fishing jobs have resulted in a lot more rockfish out there to harvest. The idea that our fishing heritage back in the early days of the Marine Life Protection Act were compared to a handful of pennies thrown on a map by Astrid Schultz was really frustrating. I remember that to be really hurtful, but even back then, not taking into account our heritage, our families, or any of the other Italian families, Portuguese families, Chinese immigrants, all the fishing families that lived in Monterey and Santa Cruz, and actually brought those towns into existence by their hard labor. Non-extraction proponents are now going to have an entire session with the MLPA process, but these people are losing absolutely nothing during this process. It's the fishing families who lose their livelihoods. So my prediction is that in fact 30-30 is coming into play here, and that the actual numbers of rockfish won't be counted correctly, and that we'll have more of our fishing grounds taken away, and that more fishing boats will be gone and rotted and sunk, and there'll be hardly any fishermen left. There is no reason to do this. These fishing stocks have, according to these biologists, many of them are completely rebuilt, and hook and line fishermen do not affect the total numbers of fish out there because we have low impact. And we have severe limitations on what we can collect and catch. And all those fish that we catch are e-ticketed, and Fish and Wildlife has the records almost immediately of what we catch. I'd like to point out that people with an active VMS, which is a monitoring system that I have on my vessel, maybe should be allowed to fish within the MPAs because they're low impact, and we can find out exactly what the effects of 10 years of closures have been. Instead of doing larval samples, you could use the fishermen as a tool, just like we use other tools in the toolbox for managing fisheries. And we've heard many times over and over how the scientific community wants to work with the fishermen, but we never see any of that occurring. So why not use the fishermen to the advantage of science, and we can all work together to use these areas to make a sustainable harvest, realizing that we're not impacting the overall biomass of fish that are out there. The last point I'd like to make is that you see the recent oil spill in Southern California. Do MPAs, marine protected areas, do they stop oil spills, electronic e-waste seeping in, or climate change? No, they do not. So let's reevaluate the intent of marine protected areas and include a overall comprehensive battle to ensure that we don't have more oil pipeline spills that impact fishing families, that we can reduce the effects of climate change on salmon stocks, and then we can all work together so that we can have a few fishing boats left in our harbors. Otherwise, we're going to lose our entire fishing history. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Christian. And there were lots of tidbits through each of these questions that were answered about what role you would like the fishing community to play in the MPA program moving forward. Heard, responses about wanting to inform the science, inform the monitoring. Heard thoughts on success, the community working together to counter effects of multiple types of impacts, oil spills, climate change, all of those things. Others on priorities, and we've captured some other reflections. Steve Wirtz, do you want to chime in before I move down the queue? We have about 10 minutes left, and I want to make sure that we can get all these hands up.
Yeah, no, I was just going to say that we do have a program right now that's been funded that's called CCFRP, Commercial Passenger Fishing Vessel Cooperative Fishing. I forgot
Cooperative Fisheries. Chen would know.
Investigation. Yeah, so that program uses CPFV operators, and they take volunteers out to fish, and they do fish inside and outside the MPAs to look at the differences. that occur there up and down the coast. And so that, I mean, that's only one example, but that is an example that we do try to engage the fleet and then also bring in people who aren't scientists per se, but they work with the science in their efforts to catch the fish. You know, if there's proposals to by the fishing industry to conduct a science investigation or project, I think we're all ears. We're all open to that. And if you don't have the time, obviously, with the work you do, that reaching out with a scientist that could maybe help forward the process of having an engagement with the fishermen and the science community. A lot of times we do see they just want to offer the boat up, but the knowledge and skill, whatever that wants, the subject matter that wants to be investigated is important. And with the MPAs, you're right, they may not be able to protect us from oil spills or El Nino events, but if they are healthier spots than the adjacent areas, they may allow for a quicker recovery. And we were very fortunate in Orange County where 7 of the MPAs along the coastline were in the path of this recent oil spill. And because we had baseline data collected and there's been ongoing monitoring, we'll be able to make, working with NOAA, and a damage assessment of what occurred in that area. You know, if we did not have the MPAs there, who knows how much monitoring would have been done in those areas. So, and climate change, that, you know, jury's out on that, but there's studies right now, part of the baseline and long-term, to look at are MPAs resilient to climate change. I don't know if they are or not. Early evidence suggests some areas are a little better than others, but we'll learn more once this report comes out to help inform our management. But yeah, well, thank you, Christian.
Thanks, Steve. Tova, do you have something to add to that?
Yeah, I just wanted to very quickly address the concern about the 30 by 30 effort. I hear the concern that the 30 by 30 effort is going to take more fishing grounds away. And I just wanted to be clear that at this time, we don't know that that's true. The state is in this stage still doing an assessment of the protections that are already in existence and how much of those protections would count already towards the 30 by 30 goal. The MPA network being part of that, but there are other protections that could count toward that 30 by 30 goal that don't have to do with fishing necessarily. It could be national marine sanctuaries or other protections that have already been put in place. So once that assessment is completed, we'll get a better sense of, you know, if it's possible that we've already accomplished a significant portion of that 30 by 30 goal. And once that comes out, we'll have more information. So I just wanted to be clear that there are other protections that could go to that goal that don't have to do with fishing regulation.
Sounds great. Thanks, Tova. Tom Hafer, I'm going to ask you to unmute. And I think that there's somebody who's asking for help. And so we'll add you to the queue because I think that's what's happening. And I will ask you to unmute when we get to you. So we only have 7 minutes left. So if we can all be concise so we can get to the next 4 people, would be really appreciative. Go ahead, Tom.
Hello, everyone. I was there in the beginning of the MLPA process. I was on the stakeholder committee for spot prawns and nearshore on the South Central. One of the things that was talked about a lot during the whole process was collaborative research with the commercial fishermen. We did do some of that, 2 years of that, both inside and outside the MPAs. I did Estero, Cambria, Pedras Blancas, Big Creek. Not Sur at all. I don't know why we didn't do Sur. With trapping studies that we did on the nearshore. We had a protocol all worked out. We worked with the scientists from Cal Poly, the students from Cal Poly. Fish and Game paid me $13,500 to build traps for the project. I did that. And then all of a sudden, after the 2 years, they dropped the ball and we didn't go anymore. I don't know why that happened. Steve, you were talking about the sport guys, hook and line on the inside and outside the MPAs. That's all fine and good, but those guys don't get tight to the beach where all the nearshore fish live. You know, a cabezon and a grass bass isn't going to bite a drifting hook. So, I mean, they do good work. They tag fish, but it really needs the trapping studies and maybe even hook studies inside and outside the MPAs. You know, it's been what, 14 years now, I think. 2007 ours went in. So it's been a long time, and you know, we still have all that gear. And I don't know, I think it's time to maybe give it a try again, see what really is happening. And if there is biodiversity in these MPAs, or is it just a bunch of big fish eating all the little fish? Because when we went into Big Creek, 6 days, 2 trips, all we caught was big lingcod and big cabezon. And we thought we were going to go in there and tag all kinds of fish. I think we brought 3,000 tagged with us. We only tagged like 300 fish. We caught more fish in the fished areas of Estero and Peters Blancas and Cambria than we did at Big Creek. So maybe that biodiversity thing ain't happening in these MPAs now. I mean, I think it's time to go there and look. And you know, the whole, like Ellen was saying, the whole process was flawed. You had a lot of backdoor dealings with all the environmental groups, private meetings with the Blue Ribbon Task Force, not with the fishermen, just with the environmental people. And, you know, we had a perfectly good proposal that we put forth, the fishermen, and they didn't even look at it. And what they did with the sanctuary proposal, that took everything. And then at the end, they made them all bigger because they don't want to throw the baby out with the bathwater. I mean, if you were there and saw what went down, it's had to be illegal. It had to be.
Tom. So Tom, I want to be mindful that we have 2 minutes left, and we have captured the concerns with the MLP initiative. And we added this bit too about what you shared about collaborative research, and you would like to see more of that, and your concerns about the state of the science, and that you are seeing the biodiversity, or excuse me, wrote it here. You're not seeing the biodiversity in the MPAs, and so you don't feel like they are being successful. Have I captured that accurately?
Well, I mean, it's not that I'm not seeing it. I saw it at Big Creek, but we haven't went in there in what, 12 years now to see what really is going on.
Perfect. So we need to reevaluate. Exactly. Perfect. I'm sorry to cut you off. We have 2 minutes left, and we have a couple more folks that would love to get through. Anything else before I move on to Adam? I know there's so much to say, and I wish we had more time. Okay. Adam, I'll ask you to unmute.
I think I got it.
You got your question answered, or your comment?
Oh, no, I just said I think I got it unmuted. Everyone
yes.
could hear me?
Yes.
All righty. My name's Adam Maliotti. I'm a 4th generation commercial fisherman here in Monterey. I feel pretty privileged to be able to say that because, you know, fishing up and down the coast of California, you don't see too many young people getting in the industry anymore. But the one thing I wanted to kind of ask and touch on real quick is what species were they actually looking for when they created these MPAs? Was it just based off rockfish, Was it based off of different types of, corals and kelps and ecosystems? And when this stuff was being created, what methods were they using to collect the data? Because like some of these other fishermen have said, we're not seeing obviously what you guys are seeing. And we're